My name is Matthew Granger. I'm 46 years old and live in a small town called Danville, tucked away in rural Indiana. I work as a network installer for farms, remote properties, and outlying public schools, the kind of job that requires long stretches of highway and lots of silence between utility poles. That kind of life taught me to be comfortable with solitude, AM radio tuned to preaching stations, and an old digital thermometer dangling from my truck's rearview mirror. That March night, the sky looked ready to collapse. The clouds were so thick the moon could barely pierce through. I was driving along Route 231, heading to a tiny place called Cross Hollow, where a public school would be completely offline if I didn't get there before sunrise. It was Tuesday, and I'd already been awake for nearly 20 hours. That's when I saw her, standing by the side of the road, alone, in front of a rusted sign you could barely read. It looked like something out of a horror movie. The silhouette of a woman draped in a white mantle and veil fluttering in the wind. She wasn't hitchhiking. She didn't wave or make a gesture. She just stood there, staring straight at me as if she knew I was coming. Everything in me said to keep going. It's dangerous to stop like that at night on a deserted road, but my foot, like it had a will of its own, began to ease off the gas until I stopped the truck a few yards ahead. I looked in the mirror. She was still there, motionless, just watching me. I shifted into reverse and slowly backed up, rolled down the window and asked if she was okay. Her response was simple, but full of something I couldn't quite name. "I need to get to Willow Springs. Can you take me to the fork?" Her voice was soft, filled with a peace that contrasted with the tension of the dark highway. She spoke slowly, like someone who had all the time in the world. There was something ancient in her tone, something that stirred places inside me I had forgotten even existed. I nodded and opened the door. She stepped in calmly, sitting with quiet dignity. She held a small, light blue cloth bag embroidered with white thread that shimmered slightly. Under the dashlight, the scent that filled the cab was jasmine and incense, a clean, familiar aroma like church candles just extinguished. "You can call me Grace," she said, with a serene smile that made my chest ache a little. We drove, in silence for a few minutes. Outside, the storm threatened to break at any moment, and the wind howled around the truck like it was whispering ancient warnings. Just as I started to feel comfortable, she broke the silence. "Do you have faith, Matthew?" It caught me off. God? No one had asked me that since my mother's funeral nearly 10 years ago. I sighed before answering, told her yes, or at least I thought so, that I was raised Catholic, that my grandma used to pray the rosary every day, that when I was a kid my mom taught me the story of Our Lady of Fatima. I even remembered the small statue she kept on her nightstand, the Virgin with an exposed heart, surrounded by light and peace. "She's still with you," Grace said, even though I hadn't mentioned my mother's passing. "You've just forgotten how to listen." Those words froze me. I glanced at her from the corner of my eye. She just smiled, gazing out the window as if she could see something out in the dark. I kept driving, slower now, like time itself was stretching. Then she spoke again. "Don't take the detour after the bridge. Even if the GPS insists, don't go that way. Trust me." I didn't know whether to laugh or listen. That road was known for rock slides and accidents. The detour, just past the old iron bridge, was always faster, but also more dangerous in the rain. The map told me to take it, but she said not to. "Why?" I asked. She simply replied, "Because there are still things that need to happen to you, and down that road, everything would end now." The way she said it, it wasn't a warning, it was certainty. We continued. The radio hissed with a sermon on repentance and salvation. Outside, the first drop of rain slammed against the windshield. Then came the others. When I crossed the bridge and saw the sign for the detour, my hand hesitated on the wheel, and I could swear, for just a second, I saw my mother's face reflected in the rearview mirror. I stayed on the main road, ignoring the detour, And just 2 minutes later, I saw the flash. A semi had overturned on the detour. Diesel and debris scattered across the road. Stopped cars. People shouting. It had just happened, maybe 10 minutes ago. If I had gone that way, I looked over at the passenger seat. Grace was gone. No open door. No sound of leaving. No trace at all. Where she had been sitting, there was a statue of Our Lady of Fatima, the exact same kind my mother used to keep by. Her bed, the sound of rain pounding on the hood snapped me back. My heart still raced, as if trying to catch up with what my mind struggled to process. The statue of Our Lady of Fatima sat peacefully on the passenger seat, untouched, porcelain white, serene eyes gazing forward, draped in a mantle adorned with tiny golden roses, a symbol my mother had cherished with almost childlike devotion. Touched it with trembling hands. It was cold, solid, real. This wasn't a hallucination, this was a presence. I restarted the engine and drove on in silence. I didn't turn the radio back on. Didn't want answers. I couldn't even look for them. Instead, I felt something inside me begin to loosen, like an old knot slowly unraveling. Images flooded in. My daughter waiting for me at home with that smile I only ever saw over video calls. My mom blessing me with holy water before I rode my bike around the neighborhood. The faith I had let die slowly, like a candle flickering, out unnoticed. The road seemed clearer now, as if the night had taken a step back. I saw a sign for a 24-hour diner a few miles ahead. I decided to stop. I needed to breathe, to gather my thoughts, and somehow to give thanks. I parked in a corner of the lot, far from the bright lights. Got out slowly, the cold night air brushing. My face like a blessing. Hands in pockets, I walked to the entrance. The smell of coffee and warm pie hit me like a long-lost hug. I ordered a black coffee and a slice of apple pie. Sat at a booth by the window. Only an elderly couple whispered nearby, and a trucker slept slumped over a table. Everything felt suspended, like time was waiting for me to understand what had just happened. That's when I noticed the waitress staring at me. A woman in her early 60s, light skin, silver hair pinned in a neat bun, eyes deep and knowing. She approached, slowly. "You, all right, hun? You look like you've seen a ghost," she said kindly but with concern. I smiled back, unsure how to respond. Told her something strange had happened on the road, but that I was okay. She nodded slowly, like someone who'd heard stories like mine before. Some things we don't understand and we just feel. The road's like that sometimes. "There are nights when the sky sends a sign," she said, then walked back to the counter. Right then I had the urge to ask the most absurd question. "Do you know someone named Grace?" But I swallowed it. Deep down, I knew I didn't have. 2. She had already done what she came to do, steered me away from destruction. Returned something I didn't even know I had lost. I went back to the truck. The statue was still there. I grabbed a clean cloth from my backpack and gently wrapped it, like someone cradling something sacred. I placed it in the glove compartment. It wasn't a relic. It was presence. It was protection. I continued toward Cross Hollow. By the time I arrived, it was morning. Kids were running through the wet schoolyard, laughing like the world held nothing but joy. I turned in my report, checked the cables, restored the internet signal, and got a warm thank you from the school principal. But there was a girl, sitting alone on the school steps. She watched me like she knew me. "You're the man who saw the lady, aren't you?" she said without hesitation. My eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "My grandma said, when the lady appears, it's to save someone. And she came for you," she replied. With the innocence of someone who doesn't doubt, I felt a chill. Sat beside her. "What's your grandma's name?" I asked. "Fatima." I closed my eyes and smiled. It was too much. It was everything. As I crossed into the city limits, I found myself noticing every little detail with an odd tenderness. The modest houses, the town square with the fountain still shut off, Mr. Wendell's garage with the crooked sign that had been leaning for years. Everything was still there, but something in me wasn't. I parked the truck in the garage and sat for a few minutes, hands on the steering wheel, like someone saying goodbye. I knew this wasn't just a return home. It was a beginning, and like every true beginning, it meant fixing what had been left behind. I picked up the phone and called my daughter, Ellie. She answered on the second ring, with that sleepy smile of someone who doesn't realize how much her presence saves. Her soul. We talked for nearly an hour. We laughed, we cried a little too. I promised to visit her over the weekend. And for the first time in years, I wanted to keep a promise with all my heart. In the days that followed, something inside me began to settle into peace. I started attending the neighborhood church on Sundays, the same one my mother loved so much. And there, sitting on a simple wooden pew, staring at a large statue of the Virgin of Fatima on the altar, I finally understood the value of being guided by something invisible. But the story didn't end there. The following week, I got a call for a new job, an emergency network installation at a retirement home near Bloomington. It was a quiet place, surrounded by trees and the scent of fresh coffee and disinfectant. The woman in charge greeted me kindly. Her name was Dolores, a petite woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. As I worked on the cables near the dining hall, I noticed an elderly woman sitting alone, looking out the window like she was waiting for someone. She wore a white veil and held a rosary in her hands, but what made me freeze was the brooch on her chest, a tiny golden rose, identical to the ones on the statue in my glove compartment. She noticed me looking and smiled. "You're the man from the road, aren't you?" I stood there, frozen. "I'm sorry." "What did you say?" "You saw the lady, and she brought you back," she said. Her eyes were calm, but her voice was firm. I walked over slowly, each step confirming this wasn't a hallucination. I sat beside her and told her everything. From the woman in the rain to the statue, the detour, the little girl at the school, the prayer at the church. She listened quietly, like someone hearing a story they already knew. "The Lady of Fatima appears when the road turns into an abyss," she said. "She didn't just save you from the accident, son. She saved you from yourself." I swallowed hard, because it hurt, but it was true. She took my hand. "Never forget, miracles aren't fireworks, they're seeds, and now you carry one." I stayed with her for over an hour, listening to stories of faith, of loss, and of divine encounters. When I returned to my truck, I opened the glove compartment to touch the statue again, but it was no longer there. In its place, a small piece of paper, handwritten, delicate and firm. "She walks with you now. Trust." From that day on, I changed. Not in the way people expect us to change. I'm still quiet. I still drink my coffee from a thermal mug. I still talk to myself while driving through Indiana's lonely roads. But now, when the sky darkens and the GPS tries to push me toward shortcuts, I take a deep breath, glance at the rearview mirror, and ask, "Which way, lady?" And inside me, a calm voice answers, "If you've made it this far, that feeling right." Now, the urge to close your eyes and remember someone who once protected you without being asked, that's faith. And faith is what keeps us alive when the road goes dark. Subscribe to this channel, because stories like this aren't just mine. They can be yours too. And do me a favor, leave a comment below. If you could thank someone, just once, someone who showed up out of nowhere and saved you, who would it be? It could be a name, a memory, a feeling. Let's create a space where miracles reveal themselves in the eyes of those who read. Time passed. The seasons changed. Snow blanketed the Midwest highways, then came spring with its rains, and the August heat that melted asphalt beneath tires. But the peace I found that night never left. It stayed with me like a quiet breeze in moments of doubt, like a mother's silent gaze that says, "It's going to be okay." My routine remained the same in many ways. Technical work, empty roads, visits to small schools, nursing homes, and remote communities. But now, every place I stepped into seemed to hold deeper, meaning. And in every face I saw, I searched for a sign, maybe not of the lady herself, but of her presence in the world. And sometimes I found it in a glance of compassion, in a child offering me a broken toy as a gift, or in an old woman asking for prayer before lunch. A few weeks after the encounter at the nursing home, I got an unexpected call. It was Ellie, my daughter. Her voice was bright. She said she'd won a scholarship to study film in another city. She wasn't sure if she should accept. It was far, out of state. But her voice carried that light I recognized, the yearning to fly. I was silent for a moment, then answered with something I didn't even know I had inside me. "Go, sweetheart. The lady will go with you." She didn't quite understand the meaning, but she smiled, and that was enough. A few days later, I planned a small weekend trip. I wanted to go back to Cross Hollow, visit the school, maybe see the little girl who'd spoken of the lady, thank the principal again. It was a way to close the circle, to ground everything I had lived. When I arrived, the town looked different. There was a harvest festival in the square, local, music playing in the distance, food stands, colorful flags. I parked and wandered through the stalls until I found the school. It was closed for the holiday, but the principal was outside chatting with neighbors. She recognized me immediately. "Matthew! What a wonderful surprise," she said, hugging me with the warmth of someone who understands more than they say. I told her I was just passing through, wanting to thank her again. She nodded, but looked around like she was searching for something. "You remember the girl who told you about the lady?" "Yes, the little one with the brown eyes." She moved away, went to live with her aunt in another state. "But before she left something for you." We walked into the school. She opened a drawer in her office and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing. On the page, a woman in a white veil, sweet eyes, a mantle covered in tiny, golden roses. Behind her, an old truck on a road, a bright light shining in the distance, and a man holding a child's hand. At the bottom, written in large, colorful letters, "She always shows up when we need her most. Thank you for listening." The tears came without permission. I felt the weight of gratitude roll down my chest like a calm wave full of memory and warmth. The principal said nothing, just handed me a glass of water and left me alone for a few minutes. That evening, before leaving town, I stopped by the small church, the same one I had visited weeks before. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, an elderly woman swept the floor in silence. When she saw me, she simply smiled and pointed her chin toward the altar. I walked slowly, each step echoing on the old wooden floor. The image of Our Lady of Fatima stood there, serene, majestic. But now something new had been added at her feet, a small wooden plaque, lovingly carved. It read, "To the traveler who was saved, walk in peace." I knelt, didn't ask for anything, didn't say a word. I just breathed, and in that blessed silence, I realized that everything I needed, I had already received. Since then, I carry faith not as a banner, but as shelter. As an inner place I can return to whenever the road gets heavy, and every now and then, when everything feels dark, and the world demands hurry, I still hear that gentle voice, "Don't go that way, trust." And I do, because some roads only reveal themselves when you're willing to walk with your eyes closed, guided by the light of a presence you cannot see, but can feel with all your heart. Hey, if you've made it this far, truly, thank you. This story isn't just mine. If it touched you in any way, then it's already fulfilled its purpose. If it reminded you of someone or stirred in you a longing to feel faith again, then it was worth it. Subscribe to the channel, not just because everyone says to. Subscribe because this space is a place for encounters, for stories that remind us the world is so much more than just what we see. Now, share with us. Have you ever lived something like this? Have you ever felt protected when everything seemed lost? Or maybe you have a story about faith, about a mother, about starting over. Write it here, with care, with courage. This isn't just a channel, it's a community. We want to hear your story too. Until the next journey, and may Our Lady of Fatima walk with you.